Hey everyone, thank you for joining. Today we're going to be covering how to win in today's competitive environment, especially for sheet metal fabricators. Um, so let's get into it, right? My name's Duncan Leggett. I've been with Paperless Parts for about 3.5 years, and I work on the account executive team. So I work with shops across the nation to evaluate and ultimately partner with Paperless Parts. But today we're going to walk through a couple key topics. First, the state of the industry and some recent trends that I've seen working with a variety of different shops, especially when it comes to how those trends are affecting your buyer's experience of actually purchasing metal. Then we'll jump into a quick demo where we'll go through a few of the key features that are important when keeping in mind buyer expectations and trying to deliver the best buyer experience while they're purchasing from your folks. And then we'll spend 5 minutes to do Q&A. I do recommend if you have questions, just chat them in the chat box throughout this session, and I'll come back to them at the end. So before we get too far into it, I want to give a quick background on myself, right? I mentioned that I'm a sales account executive here at Paperless Parts, but all those little blue dots that you see across the United States are shops that I've deeply interacted with over the 3.5 years. I don't mean just a quick phone call or a meeting with them one or two times. These were evaluations where I personally worked with each one of these shops, understood their current quote landscape from RFQ in the door all the way to order one. And we evaluated different areas that they're having challenging times within their own process, but also what they're seeing in the market, what they're seeing from their buyers when it comes to the RFQ process. So before we get into it, the theme is buyer experience. So I want to actually start with a little story of a recent experience that me and my dad had this past summer when I was in my hometown of Marblehead, Massachusetts, which is a little bit north of Boston. So my dad wanted to build a custom fireplace for our backyard to really usher in the summertime. And the first thing he needed to do was actually find a stonemason that could help provide material and labor. So first step was to go out and actually receive a quote for the services and see who was up to the task. And when he did a quick Google search, this is what he saw, around 15 or 20 different folks that had services he could potentially use. So my dad started working through all of these different individuals. Some had websites, some didn't. He would go onto websites. He would submit email requests for quote requests. There were some websites where he could fill in a contact us form. But really what he was looking for was just someone to get back to him, right? He wanted to get this fireplace started. He didn't have a crazy tight budget. He just needed someone to actually respond. And the funny thing is that the folks that we ended up going with, right on their website, there was a place where my dad actually plugged in the type of material that he wanted this fireplace to be made out of, plugged into the dimensions of the fireplace. It gave him a budgetary kind of range in the prices of what he could expect for that service. And then an email was automatically sent to his email saying, hey, we received your inquiry. We'd get back to you within 24 hours. Within like 4 hours, we got a call from the folks over at this stonemason, and they chatted with us, understood our requirements a little bit deeper, told us that we would get an official quote within a few hours. Within 30 minutes, we got another quote back into his email address, and we selected them as the individual that would actually come and build out our fireplace for us. And the funny part was, over the course of the next couple of weeks, when this stonemason was at our house actually building a fireplace, my dad kept on receiving emails and phone calls from all the other stonemasons. Some had a lot better pricing than what we had negotiated with the supplier that came to our door. But the fact was they were just too late, right? We had already started our project because while price was something we were considering, it was really also speed of execution, which a lot of buyers today in the sheet metal world, you can appreciate how they might have the same sort of appetite. So keep that story in mind as we go through this kind of changing expectations of what we're seeing in the sheet metal fabrication industry at large, right? These are three trends that I've personally seen across the shops that I've worked with, and folks telling me about what they're seeing when they're talking with their buyers. Number one, a more recent trend is material distributors are starting to ramp up their value-add capabilities, right? Folks that have normally sold to, job shops, contract manufacturers, and others, just the raw stock of sheet or plate or tube, are now actually starting to add in capabilities such as laser cutting or tube cutting, press brake forming, and starting to encroach within the value-added space. That's going to, over time, start to really make some of those first stage processing more of a commodity than truly value add, right? So that's one thing to keep in mind. Buyers are starting to be able to get significantly lower priced product, laser cut parts, bent parts from material distributors that don't need to mark up material, which is sometimes the major cost of a part. Secondly, the development of manufacturing marketplaces and instant quoting technology, right? We'll get into that in another slide, but these marketplaces and kind of modern shops have been around for the last 4 or 5 years now. And a lot of buyers have started to interact with those marketplaces, and it's changing the experience that they have dealing with sheet metal suppliers, and what they expect from all their suppliers. And then last but not least, consolidation, right? We're seeing a lot of private equity firms or certain shops start to gobble up smaller shops and build a brand of really sophisticated supply chain where buyers can interact with these large private equity firms and get capabilities ranging from additive to CNC machining to sheet metal fabrication, really in an effort to be a one-stop shop for that buyer, right? That buyer might have large value-added assembly needs, and now instead of going to 4 or 5 different suppliers, they can just go to one stop. So all these trends are affecting buyers' experiences. One in particular is, again, that manufacturing marketplaces or those instant quoting tools. Right? Folks like Send Cut Send, Oshcut, Xometry, Protolabs, Fictive, Quick Parts. Some of these are marketplaces that act as a middleman between supplier and buyer, while others actually have their own in-house processing capabilities like laser cutting and press brake forwarding and even some tube cutting and assembly, where they're offering, using modern technology, instant quoting capabilities to provide buyers a faster experience, right? A more digital experience that a lot of younger buyers are used to, right? A lot of, my sister, my brother-in-law, a lot of my friends from college have actually gone on to become buyers within the manufacturing sector. Some working for defense contractors, others working for leading OEMs like Amazon and Samsung. So with that, right, we have to realize that buyers are changing. They might not have the same sort of experience that some of the legacy buyers had when it came to manufacturing capabilities, which can lead to a wide range of issues regarding design for manufacturing and actually receiving parts that a sheet metal fabricator can make. But also those buyers are growing up, in the age of the internet. They don't remember a time before the internet. So they're used to being able to buy anything they want instantaneously, right? Going onto Amazon and getting 2-day shipping for any product they can imagine, or going onto Netflix and looking up any TV show or any movie they want right at their fingertips. So that same sort of experience starts to diffuse into their day-to-day experience working on as a buyer, experiencing with contract manufacturers. And while a lot of the folks that are listed here are usually providing buyers with prototype and simpler parts, it's not like it's not affecting even production buyers or folks that are buying a little bit more complex of product, right? Only around 7% of buyers have never tried to use one of these manufacturing networks. In fact, around 48% of buyers, both prototype buyers and production buyers, have used one of these services with instant quoting and fast delivery of parts, at least often or always, right? So again, these numbers come from studies that Paperless Parts has done with our customers' buyers. We did studies in 2020 and 2022 with around 600 different part buyers. But you can see a lot of buyers are starting to use these manufacturing networks, and it's starting to change what their expectations are when it comes to working with their local suppliers, right? They're expecting, if not instant quotes, really, really quick quotes, even for really complex value-added assembly work. And as you can see in our kind of expectations when it comes to satisfied versus unsatisfied, we can see a trend from 2020 to 2022 of buyers becoming more unsatisfied with their local suppliers' experience of quoting, right? And we believe that's because a lot of shops have been slow to adopt technology like either paperless parts or even just other solutions that are on the market. Really being able to invest in your top front office software and buyer experience, right? A lot of shops are still using antiquated methods of Excel spreadsheets or tribal knowledge with one person that's been doing it for 30 or 40 years, and they look at a print and they know the price. And they're still sending, quotes on a PDF letterhead, just like every other shop. So when it comes to thinking about how do we compete, right, with material distributors starting to get into the space and commoditizing, or the risk of commoditizing some of the first stage processing, private equity firms gobbling up shops and being able to really build some of these instant quoting tools in-house with the kind of war chest of cash they have at their disposal, how do suppliers start to compete, right? And a lot of folks think about price and think it's going to be a race to the bottom. But another area you can compete is the buyer experience, right? Going back to the story of the fire pit, right? Being able to provide your buyers with the best in-class experience will help you guys stand out against the rest of the competition and ensure that your buyers are happy doing business with you and continue doing business with you. Because at the end of the day, we are humans. We don't have AI agents or robots buying parts, right? Everyone's a human, and some humans sometimes will favor, ease of use and consistency over necessarily just price. So how does paperless parts specifically help you out here? We'll dive into a demo in a second, but some of the few key ingredients are listed on this screen, right? First is keeping your buyer's thought process and cybersecurity concerns top of mind, because we are built on the AWS GovCloud, and we have attained FedRAMP moderate equivalency for folks that deal within the defense and aerospace sectors that are looking for CMMC, but also for all buyers. For all suppliers and sheet metal shops, knowing that your data is secure on our platform. As we go through this list, right, best in class quote presentation, right? Again, especially when you're dealing with new buyers and you start to expand to new markets, a lot of folks talk about how buyers work with them because their shop has the best in class technology, best in class machines, best in class individuals that make up that company. But what your buyer's experiencing, if they're not able to come and visit the shop in person, is going to be sometimes your quote, right? That's the first thing that they experience. And so if your quote doesn't reflect the advancement that you've made on the shop floor, right? If your front office doesn't reflect that advancement, then that's a losing battle when it comes to really setting expectations with your buyers around how you're going to be best in class. Paperless also offers geometric interrogation for quick and accurate costing analysis, which we'll dive into, as well as ways to customize the quote send process. So if you need to send specialized, Excel spreadsheets to certain OEMs that require you to fill out their forms, we can also help with that, as well as also collaborating with your buyers, right? I mentioned before that a lot of buyers are getting younger, and a lot of that tribal knowledge is starting to spill out of the industry of exactly what it takes to make a part. And so a lot of that is going to fall back onto the manufacturing suppliers, where they're going to have to, number one, be on the lookout for more mistakes and design for manufacturing warnings within their process. But then two, potentially help out your buyers with explaining why certain design criteria or certain features are not optimized for what they are trying to produce. And so being able to externally collaborate with your buyers is important. And that's another area that Paperless Parts helps out with. So I'll jump into a demo. We'll wrap up after with some Q&A, and we'll go from there. So let me get out of this, and we'll jump right into Paperless. Now, this is not meant to be a full demo. If you do want a full demo, we're more than happy to schedule you one. But right now, I'm going to go through our costing analysis for a sheet metal part, how we provide quick and accurate costing analysis so we can get a quote out to your buyer as soon as possible, so they're not waiting days, if not weeks, to hear back from you. Then we'll jump into a digital quote where we can show you what your buyer will actually be experiencing on their end when they're dealing with you through Paperless Parts. And then last but not least, we'll also showcase a little bit of our analytics. And the reason why I focus on analytics when it comes to the buyer experience is because some buyers are going to care about quote turnaround speed. Other buyers are going to care more about accuracy. And one of the main problems that shops have is trying to prioritize which quotes their estimating team should be focused on today, right? And a lot of folks, this resort to first in, first out. But our analytics page will help you identify the buyers in which you should be responding to first and which ones are a little bit more lax with your turnaround time. So first but not least, let's dive into the costing analysis section. So I've uploaded a few different parts here on the left, but I'm focusing on our wire mount here. So if I scroll down, I'll see that I have this section where I can actually start building out my quote level router. So the different operation steps it takes to make this part, as well as the material. In Paperless, I have the idea of a process, where a process is just a template of manufacturing steps that usually go in a part family. So this part is a sheet metal part that's going to most likely go on my laser. And then I'm selecting 5052H32. The reason that I know that that is the material listed is because the AI involved in Paperless Parts that reads some of your PDF prints let me know that the material spec on the print was aluminum 5052H32. So now I don't need to click and view a file. I can just use that suggestion to move on. When I select that process, what happens is Paperless Parts builds out our manufacturing methods, as well as for each methods, having setup times and run times that equate to different, labor costs for the different quantity breaks that are listed, because each one of these operational workflow steps might have a different cost associated with them. So how did this all happen, right? First thing first is when I select my process, Paperless Parts will actually interrogate the geometry of the files that we have, either your 3D model or DXF file, to determine what steps are necessary. And all this is actually built on your custom logic. So what I mean is Paperless Parts looked at this file and it detected that there was a bend on the file. So it automatically brought out a forming step. If there was no bend, no forming step would come out. Same thing with a countersink, right? We could create a rule with your shop based on your logic to say, hey, if we detect a countersink, or if we detect a hole that is the diameter is smaller than the thickness of the part, we are going to default to add in a CNC operation step, or we're going to default this part to your punch. Whatever sort of logic you want, we build into your unique costing variables. So that way, when you upload the model, the method of routers is built. And then for each method, we do have calculators that drive these setup times and run times. Again, if you want to learn more about that, we are more than happy to schedule a custom demo with your files to actually show you that more in depth. But the idea here is quick analysis of your costs, being able to quickly edit by changing any of the automation on the fly, or by even adding in different operation steps as well, right? So it's quick and easy, saving you about 80% of the time that you would normally need to build out this method. Now, once we have the router steps done, we have our material logic come in as well, and there is nesting capability in Paperless Parts where we can actually nest this part. Won't get into that today, because again, we have other videos on it. But regardless, once you have your cost and you're ready to now send this out to your buyer, we now move into the quote send process. There's two ways to send a quote in Paperless. One's through the email. Another one is through an export. Again, an export into a CSV file that might match the format of one of your OEM's CSVs. It really depends on your buyers and how they expect your quotes. For this demonstration, I'll just go for the email exercise. But in a single click, I can actually finalize my quote. It's going to let me know that I have a bunch of line items that I'm missing information on, so I'm not sending in a bogus quote. I'll ignore those for now. But now I can select different email templates that will actually send an email that looks like it's coming from my email as the shop's salesperson or estimator. And I'm able to send out this quote in the click of a button. When I click send quote, what happens is my buyer gets this exact email with a PDF attached if you wish it, right? We can turn that on and off. But if you don't send a PDF, or even if you do, we also offer a link that will be included in the email that sends them to this digital quote. And this digital quote will have your logo, no indication of Paperless Parts, right, in the quote itself, but it would have your logo as well as your contact information. And now your buyer is able to actually see the parts that they're purchasing, which is a very, very unique experience. I'll get into some of the feedback that we've gotten from our customers, buyers around this quote. But having everything in one place, again, makes it easier for your buyers to do business with you. And it also helps reduce their risk by potentially ordering the wrong part just because they're looking at part numbers all day. Sometimes they might actually purchase the wrong part. So being able to actually view the file, whether it's a 3D model or a PDF, really helps them to ensure that they're purchasing the right item. Last but not least, we also allow you to add multiple different options for your buyers. You can see we have different quantities as well as different lead times to make it really easy to offer dynamic pricing. So that way, if your buyer cares about speed and less about price, you have the option for them to select, hey, I want, to pay almost, 40% more to get this part 10 days quicker than average, right? Up to you how you want to apply that strategy. There's a variety of different strategies when it comes to expedited lead times, but that's also an option for you. Now, there's another option here. If you do want to have your buyer check out through Paperless Parts, they can, where they could check out, submit a PO, and that will automatically factor into your Paperless Parts account. Or you can have this just as a view only, where they will view the quote and then submit a PO through their, historical means of getting a PO to you. It's really up to, again, yourself and how your buyers interact with your brand. But regardless, this interface will set you apart from some of the competition. Last but not least, we'll dive into analytics. So when it comes to our analytics, the purpose of analytics is there's a multitude of them. One of the ones that I wanted to focus on for today's conversation was how this enables you to provide a better buying experience for your customers. And that is by prioritizing the right quotes at the right time. So in Paperless, you are able to build out, right? We store all your files. You build out your costing methods in Paperless. You send out your quotes in Paperless Parts. You can follow up your quotes on Paperless Parts. We have all this data in one place that makes these analytics actually useful because they're accurate. You're not trying to wrangle in data from different spreadsheets in your ERP system and your share drive, right? All this data is in one place. So it's data that you can rely on. That's number one. A couple use cases of how this can help you identify which buyers to work with is number one, we can look at each different accounts or each individual buyer at these accounts to see what their individual win rates are and how many quotes that they've sent you versus how many orders that you've won, right? On a part number basis as well. But another area that we can look at that's a little bit more granular is, again, this concept of turnaround time and how do buyers respond to quote turnaround time. Well, in Paperless Parts, again, we track how long it takes you to send out a quote to your buyer and that win rate. And so you can filter out this logic to look at your top 20 accounts, right? I'll focus on Boeing for now. And as I filter in Boeing, I can actually start to determine if Boeing cares about turnaround speed, right? And so I'll look at Boeing and I can see that our turnaround time, our win rates are around 40, 70%, 50%, 45%, all within the first 1 or 2 days. And then after 2 days, they drop off significantly. So that's telling me, based on my historical knowledge, that I need to submit a bid to Boeing within 2 days, or else it's just not worth responding to. Now, if I do the same analysis for maybe John Deere might have a different values that it's giving me, right? It might say that up to 5 days, John Deere is awarding us business. So maybe turnaround time isn't as important for John Deere. That's very helpful to know with data because then I can set up priorities within Paperless where we will prioritize Boeing quotes that are due in the next 2 days rather than John Deere quotes, even if the John Deere quote came in a day or two before the Boeing quote, right? And again, if you're managing your quoting process using shared drives and emails and Excel spreadsheets, it's really hard to have this flexibility of finding out this data and then filtering down which quotes are which to give to your estimating team. But this is another area which paperless parts can help you deliver the best experience by focusing on the right buyers at the right time. So I'm going to be wrapping up here. I'm going to go back to the slide deck real quick. But this is actually some of the results that we've seen, right? Where our customers have submitted these emails and quotes to us within the last week, where they have just shown what their buyers have been saying about paperless, right? We have a channel internally at Paperless where we kind of get to share all the cool things we're hearing about paperless parts in the market. And these are just a couple of the screenshots I grabbed, right? Buyers saying how they love the digital quote because everything's in one document and it's so much easier to get business. Or the fact that they're able to actually view the part itself makes it so much easier to know what they're purchasing, and how they love the ease of use and to never send, their old PDF quotes again. So this is just one kind of case point of how buyers are reacting to the paperless parts experience, both due to its speed of quote as well as its digital quote. And then we also, partner with a few different fabricators that have said great things about how they've implemented paperless parts and how it's changed working with their buyers, right? Metal FX, all their buyers never want to see, right, that old PDF quote again. Waltz Bros, they've been able to grab new work and retain existing work just because how impressed the customers have been with the turnaround speed as well as that digital quote. And then M3 Fab, right? A little bit different, not just about turnaround time with quote speed, but M3 Fab really collaborates with their buyers, making it really easy to show them what the quotes are that they're looking at, but then also collaborate with them during the costing analysis section to let them know how a quick design edit could actually save them a lot of costs, right? Again, that theme that buyers are getting younger, and therefore it's up to the manufacturing suppliers to help them through that DFM process. Paperless Parts makes that collaboration easy, even if we didn't cover that feature today. So that is the webinar that we put on. I wanted to thank everyone for showing up and coming for today's session. I'll wait here for questions for a minute or two. But again, if you want to see paperless parts in action for your own shop, see a demo with your own part files, understand how we work with your capabilities and your processes, I would recommend you hit up our team by going to paperlessparts.com and selecting contact sales or get a demo, or you can respond directly to me, and I'm more than happy to navigate you guys to the right individuals at Paperless that you could work with. All right, we'll wait another minute for questions, but I think we're all good, Allie.
Great, thanks everyone.